First question, can you guys please explain Glue's staking mechanism and the benefits it will offer to users, please?
Okay, so when you're saying staking, I mean, I'm assuming that's more the validating. So there will be different mechanisms, I guess. Okay, sorry, let me back up. The Glue token itself is a proof of stake token, and you will be able to stake it to become a validator and help validate transactions. And there will be incentives paid to do so, right? So I think that's the Glue token itself will be used as the proof of stake token, very similar to how Ethereum, Polkadot, et cetera, will work. There will potentially also be tokens for the dApps. Those will have a different mechanism, obviously, since that's not for the chains themselves. We haven't really quite nailed those down exactly. There's probably going to be some staking opportunities there as well. But high level, yeah, the Glue token, I mean, it's I would say, normal for all intents and purposes for how a proof of stake token usually works and the benefits you end up getting. So very similar to basically all the other proof of stake tokens out there.
Although I will say that in addition to that, there may be circumstances where it makes sense to stake your stuff in a way that is locked up, and in those cases, there could be, for example, different sorts of incentives for that versus just sort of pressing the validator button and then undelegating later on.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the exact reward structure and how do we incentivize, especially for early contributors, how do we add some extra incentives? I think there will be definitely lots of different opportunities. But yeah, I took that more from a tech perspective than a I guess rewards perspective. But yep.
Thanks, guys. Excellent. Let's go to the second one. For someone who is not very tech savvy, can you explain how the L2s will communicate with each other on Glue?
Yes, but probably not in a not very tech savvy way. So the nice thing, I have to think about this. The nice thing with this is that it's called XCM. It's called cross-chain messaging. So because the chains are connected themselves via the relay chain, via the L1, messages can natively be passed, right? So unlike Ethereum, where, for example, the messages, you cannot send a message from Arbitrum to Ethereum, relay it there, and send it to Optimism. You would probably use an Oracle for that. But because it's a native ecosystem and because all the chains are natively connected via the L1, and again, obviously, Ethereum connects them as well, but there's a protocol that lets you pass messages natively. So it's not an Oracle. It's kind of more like a bridging infrastructure, I would say. Maybe it's closer to like a wormhole or layer 0 type implementation, but it's native. And so really, the idea is it can pass messages. And the nice thing with that is you can not only just pass tokens, but yeah, you can execute, for example, smart contracts across the L2s because the L2s guarantee that they will honor the request as long as it's a valid request. Meaning that when you pass a message, usually when you pass a message, right, you cannot be ensured that it will get executed. On Glue, you can. And because of that, they become a whole lot more useful. And I apologize that wasn't a great non-technical explanation. But yeah, I think the native implementation of the messaging and the guarantees that the protocol itself gives for the messages getting executed, that's really the combination that makes it a whole lot more powerful, that gives you cross-chain composability, where that's not true for example, in Wormhole, you can do a cross-chain message, but there's no guarantee that the message will execute on the other side. And so because it's native on Glue, it does. And so it makes it a whole lot more powerful.
I think one way of thinking about part of this would be, given the other chains, like the Snapshot mentioned, they all theoretically could talk to each other in a certain format. There's two issues. One is, technically speaking, they don't have some of the same stuff that Glue has. But maybe more importantly, they're adversarial. And so those chains are actually adversarial, and they don't have a lot of incentive to try and make themselves work between each other. And in the case of Glue, the L2s are not adversarial at all. They're friendly because they're part of the Glue ecosystem. And so we can implement things and later on iterate on things that actually make it easier for them to talk to each other, make it easier to share information, for example, balances and so forth between each other, without having to worry about the politics of, well, is this going to take away from this L2's TVL? Because it doesn't matter, because it's all part of the Glue ecosystem.
That's very unique, right? Because Ethereum does not have such a technology to do that, right?
Correct. Yeah, Ethereum doesn't. I think Avalanche has something for but it's a lot more difficult. Like to like P chain, C chain, all that is they can communicate, but not quite as well. Obviously, Polkadot has it, but they don't really have it because their L2s are auctioned off, and so then you have the adversarial problem and that the problem that Ogle mentioned. So I'm pretty confident the combination of the friendly L2s with the communication infrastructure is quite unique, certainly of how it's implemented. Maybe there's other technical implementations out there, but I think building on this will reveal some really, really cool use cases. This is probably one of the pieces that I am most excited about is to have composable L2s. And again, maybe others can do it, but it hasn't really worked out that way because of the incentive structure. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to see how our incentive structure with the tech, with the implementation turns out, because yeah, it'll be pretty unique.
Just a quick clarification here. Would both L2s need to be using the glue token, or could they L2s be using their own tokens and still communicate with each other?
No, so all L2s in the Glue ecosystem will use the Glue token, right? Because it's a really terrible user experience to have to like know which token is actually used for gas, then trade that token. And really the incentive is that the Glue token is the one who absorbs a lot of the benefits when the ecosystem grows, right? And so to the adversarial versus non-adversarial part, if the L2s don't all share one base token, then kind of back to having the more adversarial question, right? And so we really want to avoid that. We're seeing it much more as one large piece of technology with one large ecosystem with one incentive structure, and a lot less of the kind of more anarchistic approach of we will build an L1 and then somebody will build an L2 and somebody else will build a different L2, everyone with totally different incentive structures for each one of them, right? Because in that scenario, like Arbitrum and Optimism, like Olga was saying, they have no incentive to cooperate really, right? Because if people switch from Arbitrum to Optimism, then one token price goes down, one token price goes up, and that's bad, right? Versus for us in Glue, the idea is let's build the best tech possible. Let's give it to developers. Let's have developers build cool stuff on it. Let's attract users to it. But it really doesn't make any difference, right? The developers should build on the L2 that is the L2 or the L2s, multiple of them, that are best for their use case. And the users should use the one that's in their best interest, aka that's where the tech is, that's where the dApp is that they want to use. That's where it's optimized for their use case, right? So we want them to go to where they have the best user experience, and we want the developers to go where they have the best developer experience. And what we don't want is for any of those things to be dictated by token go up and wrong token go down, right? If it should all be friendly, right? It's one ecosystem. Like, why would we want to have the L2s fight against each other? And I think there is a solid merit to the other way of doing it, which is you get cool innovation, right? But that innovation comes at a huge trade-off on usability. And so given our target audience and our strategy, the user experience is a lot more important to us than maybe being at the absolute cutting edge of innovation, which does come at the price of that very messiness.
Excellent, Snapshot. Thank you so much for clarifying. It gives a bigger picture, better understanding. Next question is very popular usually. What are some of the burning mechanisms that the ecosystem will implement to burn Glue?
Ogle, I'll let you go with that one.
Yeah, sure. I think that burn is an interesting word here. I think that there's burning, and then there's like sinks, right? And then there's usages, and those are all three different things that obviously that we would want to implement. Burning per se, I doubt will probably ever exist. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe some other project will do it, but Glue per se, I can't imagine a reason for it to be like, oh, let's just destroy tokens. I don't really understand the purpose there, but I can see a purpose in putting sinks in place, so places where stuff goes and gets stuck, or places where stuff goes and gets used, or places where stuff goes and starts to, and it helps to like secure the network, for example, with validation. And there's a million ways for those to happen. So imagine every way you've ever heard of on every chain. Those are theoretically the case here.
Thank you, Hugo. Appreciate it. Yeah, burning is not the best word to use.
Well, I mean, it's not a meme coin here, you know. I mean, most of the burn stuff is mostly is just like hype related things that are very short term. And there's been quite a lot of research done on the effect of burning versus not burning of tokens and so forth. And effectively, it's either no effect or no effect. So really no effect. Every now and then there is like a short-term pump to that, and it's really focused on marketing stuff. But if we're building an actual product here, like why would we create money that, money, so to speak, why would we create tokens that is not meant to be used? Like, why create it in the first place then? It just makes no sense. So like, a lot of times they're like, oh, we created, we like mint 1 zillion tokens, and on day 7, we're going to burn, 8 trillion of them. Well, why not just like not make, why not just make 1 zillion minus 8 trillion to begin with? Because it's all marketing. Like, there's no purpose to it. And we're not going to be doing nonsense like that.
Yeah, I think just from a focus perspective, right? I think we want to focus on building use cases, make sure the tokens actually get used. I mean, there's so many ways that we can really get adoption and users buying the token for really actually using it. So I'm totally with you, right? I think there's so many, productive things we can work on versus just kind of like meme coin type short-term things. So yeah, I have never really loved the whole burn thing. I actually, it's interesting. I was looking at Ethereum. They're obviously burning tokens, right? That's kind of part of their whole ultrasound money thesis. And I was looking at how much they burn, and it's like hundreds of millions of dollars a year, actually a month, I think. And I was thinking, it's like, if they had taken that money and invested it in like marketing and user acquisition, or even just the tech and the product, where would Ethereum be today if for the last 3 years they would have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on the product or again the marketing? And so I've always been sad that they didn't, right? Because like, okay, sure, did the token maybe go up slightly more? Kind of, maybe, right? But practically speaking, it's like having a startup and using the money that you have to buy back your stock instead of actually building your product and growing your company, right? It's like, well, could you do that? And would it maybe make some financial sense? It's like, sure. But like, it's like buying back Instagram stock on day whatever, 50 when you have no users yet. It just doesn't make any sense right now. So maybe if we become massive and there's just this huge turnover, right? And then we're all out of ideas of how to make this better. Maybe burning makes more sense, right? But I've always wished that Ethereum had gone the route of saying like, no, let's use that money to make this product amazing, right? Because just the sheer volume of ad budget or tech budget or security, but I mean, any of those, right? Pick any of them. To me, I think Ethereum would have benefited way more from productively using the money than saying, well, all we have is good enough. Let's just buy back our own tokens so that price goes up, right? It's kind of weird. So I never understood that, and I've never really loved that. I guess as just a business strategy, right? It just doesn't make any sense to me why you wouldn't just take the money and make your product so much better. Especially because Ethereum it's well funded, but it's not that well funded. It's not like billions a year well funded, right? That's what they could have had. So yeah, I've always thought that was a bit of a shame that they went that route with it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next, Bill.
Beautiful. Guys, next question. How do you envision institutional users can effectively use and benefit from Glue?
I can definitely chat here a little bit. Snapshot, unless you got something.
Nope, I'll let you go.
Yeah, so on this point, there's a lot of vision and there's been a lot of discussion. I mean, I've spent a couple of years talking to institutional level people and asking them what would something look like that actually made sense for them. And there's 2 things that always stood out in those conversations, and it happens to be the same 2 things that stand out for if you're a brand new user. One is user experience. It needs to make sense. So institutional needs to have stuff that actually makes sense to them. It needs to look like it makes sense. The words need to make sense. It needs to relate to something they've done before, right? So it's easier to learn, etc. 2 is it needs to be secure, safe. They need to know that whenever they put their money into a thing, that it's actually, they're likely to get it back. They have what's called fiduciary duties to their investors, to their holders, and to those whose money they're investing to make sure that they do whatever they can within reason to manage that risk. And so always the answer was, we need really good user experience and we need really good security. And what do you know? That's what Glue is based on, right? Those are the 2 core tenets of Glue. And so that's like the big picture answer. In a more sort of focused fashion, I guess I could say one thing that I like the idea of, and it's related to our multi-sig related stuff. I'm not sure if everyone's read the white paper and read into the native multi-sig and how that works, but I can imagine lots of different fun ways for that to actually work out for people who are institutional. So, for example, let's imagine a world where you have a company that has $1 zillion, and you have traders underneath, and those traders are allowed to do certain things. Well, if you say, hey, look, trader, you've got $1 million of funds you can go trade with from our institution, and look, trader number 2, you've got the same. Look, trader number 3, you've got the same, and you guys can basically do whatever you want to within certain bounds. You could actually enforce that with Glue, because you could set up such that the trader has one of the signatures to be able to do the transactions, but they don't have the other 3. And so the institution itself will be able to sign transactions that they want to do. So, for example, perhaps only with contracts that they want the traders to work with. Maybe they only sign if you're dealing with Aave, you're dealing with Uni, you're dealing with PancakeSwap, you're dealing whatever, but they don't sign the transaction if you're dealing with anything else outside that parameter, or if you're trading a token that's outside of whatever they say is okay. And this would enable them to put guardrails around their traders, enable them to manage the flow of capital that each trader uses, and do so in a safe way that also gives the traders the ability to actually play the game in crypto the way they normally would do in the stock market. So that's just one good example I could see, and one that I'm very excited to see if it actually plays out.
Thank you. Okay, next question, guys. Can you explain the processing criteria for listing new tokens on the Glue platform?
Yeah, so, okay, first off, Glue, the network, will be completely permissionless, and there will be no control over that, right? So anyone can create a token, anyone can deploy a smart contract, and by that also anyone can bridge from Ethereum to Glue whichever tokens they want, right? So, I mean, the whole system is permissionless, so there's no real, quote unquote, listing criteria. On the hub itself, I think it's going to be the same deal, where I don't think we will want to have like a board that controls listing. But I think the bigger question there is, do we pay incentives to generate liquidity, right? And so I think that ends up being the more crucial one. Honestly, we will go with what users want, right? If users want to trade meme coins and we get a lot of requests for that, we will probably structure incentives we want to do what the users want, right? So if the users want to trade meme coins, we will do our best to get meme coins nice and liquid, right? So I think philosophically, it's a lot more about what's the user experience, what do users want. I think Binance has pretty clearly shown that what people want is as broad of a token listing as possible. Obviously, I think at the same time, given our mission of being relatively safe, having just everything there right away kind of clashes with that, right? Because obviously, if it's brand new stuff, there's probably gonna be a lot of rugs in there. And so I think, though, that we're going to solve that much more with just very clear disclosures where we're like, hey, this is brand new. And unless you really know what you're doing, this might be a very bad idea, right? So I think I'm more on the let's help users understand when they're about to buy something extremely, extremely high risk. But I'm very much not on the side of we should dictate what they should do or should not do. It should be permissionless, and you should be able to do whatever you want. At the same time, are we going to have incentives for the newest thing that's probably going to rug? Definitely not, right? So I think it's a bit more of a nuanced answer than just a straight up yes, we will have an editorial board, because we won't, because it's permissionless. But obviously, I think as Glue Foundation and later on as the network, right? Because the incentives obviously need to be paid for, and the treasury is going to be on chain. And so users can vote on it, right? I think there's going to be a strong push to decentralize all of those decisions as quickly as possible, and decisions where there are decisions to be made, which is much more in the incentive than the actual listing side. But yeah, and a lot of that honestly will just kind of depend too, right? Like how difficult is it to get some of the liquidity going? We have a lot of cool cross-chain liquidity stuff that we're working on. If that works out as well as I think it will, then the liquidity is going to get a lot less of a challenge. And we will really lean into, I think you should be able to trade whatever you want, right? Again, I also think we will want to help people to not get constantly scammed, right? So that's the balance. But I think, again, that's more of an education and disclosure thing versus a just not permitting it thing.
Thanks, Snapshot. Let's go to the last question. And please, if this is the last question from the community, if you have any question live right now, just raise your hand and we open the floor. Last one on the new site, newly designed site. The tokenomics mentioned that part of the on-chain treasure will be sold during the main sale later this year. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to, if you want me to snapshot.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, how else do you raise tokens without selling? Raise funds in an IDO without selling tokens. That's what it means. I mean, they have to come from somewhere. Right now, they all sort of exist in the treasury, and so that's how it works. I mean, that's how everything in the original stuff works. Is you have a certain amount of tokens, and you say, hey, look, we want to to raise $100, and here's 100 tokens, and they're $1 a piece. So here you go. And now the treasury has 100 fewer tokens. It's got 100 more dollars, and someone else out there has 100 tokens in their wallet or in their wallets. So I mean, I'm not sure if I quite understand the question entirely. Maybe it's sort of a misunderstanding of how this stuff works in the first place. But that's actually, I mean, that's just literally how it works. You sell tokens from some bucket to other people's buckets.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I kind of read the question more as like, do we have exact numbers yet as to how large the IDO is, et cetera? And the answer is no. We have a lot of stuff we're working on, but the details are not final enough yet to be released. So I think that goes with the exact date and the exact terms. So neither of those things are final enough to be able to release yet. So that's how I took the question. But yeah, I'm obviously with you.
I'm a little more autistic than you are, so I take it literally when someone says how. But yeah, I think that's a good point. That's probably
fair enough. My guess is my thing was what they actually read.
I think you're probably right. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so just listen to him, ignore what I said, my like pedantic, condescending reply, and listen to what he said. I will say though that we're still in ongoing conversations with the partners we're going to be utilizing to do the IDO listing. Well, really, I'm very excited about all of them. There's more than one, and there's less than 10. Partners, we can say that. And the ones we're talking to are really great, and they're going to be great partners, I think, on an ongoing basis. They're going to make sure everything's fair and done right for the users who do participate in the IDO. And as you guys who were earlier investors in the LBP or in the seed, then you probably, I mean, I hope it goes without saying, but we're trying to make sure everything makes sense for all of you, and frankly for us, because we were also literal investors in the company ourselves, myself and Snapshot. And so we want to make sure everything makes sense for everybody whenever we're doing this. And hopefully we succeed at that.
Yeah, and adding to that, so the tech has been ready for close to 2 months now. So there's a few things we had to kind of like check off. But so the tech, ironically, is actually not the holdup. The thing we're doing is we are trying to coordinate these platforms to get the best possible both marketing outcome, where as many people know about Glue as possible. We want as broad of a distribution as possible, both geographically, right? We don't just want to say, okay, cool, we're only going to focus on whatever, South Korea, right? We want a broad distribution. And as it turns out, coordinating multiple platforms to have everyone market the right way at the right time towards like a common goal is tricky. So that's turned into a bit of a management and time management and project management task on our side that turned out to be a little more complex than we thought. But so the tech's ready. It's really more about how do we line up the marketing and all the various pieces. But we've made very good progress, so we're very excited, and we're hoping to have some more updates for everyone soon there. But yeah, it's pretty much ready to go. We're just trying to finalize all those details, and so we're not trying to be vague. What we don't want to do is say, hey, this is what it is, and then have to like change our mind because one of the partners needed to say, hey, no, look, it doesn't work on that day or that amount or with this, right? So we're really just trying to have everything like set in stone before we say anything, just because we don't want to have to backtrack. But it is making extremely good progress. So it's not a matter of it's not progressing, is we don't have the details yet, and we want to wait and not screw up the release of the details, basically.
Yeah, in some ways it's actually analogous to our chain, because we're trying to turn what are really like adversarial L2s into Glue L2s that work together. And each of them, a dollar not going to one IDO is a dollar. I mean, a dollar going to one is a dollar not going to another one. And so there's a bit of a campaign that we really would like to have everyone very, very much simultaneously involved in the pushing and the spreading, et cetera, across the board. And sometimes it takes a little bit of convincing for Burger King to give some tips to Walmart, and McDonald's and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Because from their perspective, they're all competitive. But I think we've gotten there, or we're pretty close to getting there, and then we'll be able to give a little more detail.
And
Yeah, we have some really awesome partners lined up on that too. They've been working really hard with us to get everything coordinated. So we're super excited with how it's going. Again, it's just been more of a how do you get everything to work just right?
Yep. And just so you guys know, I've got only, unfortunately, this is Ogle again, a reminder, I'm hosting this space because things were screwing up. But I only have 3% battery, so I think we have enough question for probably one before this gives out on me. So if anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand. But if it cuts off, it's not me. You know, I don't hate you. It's just Elon hates you.
I was going to more so make a comment with y'all. Yeah, glad you hit on the marketing aspect. That's kind of something I was going to ask as well. I'm an early investor in the first LPB y'all had, and yeah, the unique part about you is you're layer one serving as the foundational blockchain infrastructure, and then you also have the use case L2, which you employ multiple L2 solutions that are optimized for like specific apps, like either such as finance, gaming, asset transfers, etc. So you're very unique in that sense, how you're differentiating yourself from a lot of the, I don't call them competitors, but a lot of the other projects out there. So I think it's great. You're trying to include everyone from the L2 space, kind of, be more of a cohesive structure, or however you want to call it. But no, that's great that y'all are working. I mean, from the top down. I mean, making sure you have everything set up on the back end before releasing the product, because a lot of these projects just do the opposite. They'll launch, they'll try to get a quick money grab, and then the product isn't anywhere to be seen for another X amount of months or years. So really good to see you guys.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, we're 2.5 years into the tech part, so definitely, what you're saying is the case. Really appreciate you recognizing that. Hopefully that ends up being a good thing. Just really quick, since you did mention the L2s and their different use cases, and sorry for people honking because they're morons. But in any case, since you did mention that, there's theoretically the case. We talked about it before, but there's theoretically the case that a developer could build different functions of their dApp on different Glue L2s. So if something, for example, a deposit needed to be on something a little bit more secure, it might take a little longer, to make sure it confirms or finalizes. They could put that part on a Glue L2 that is focused more on security. And then they could put another part of it that's focused on more, like speed of transaction or like price of transaction. And so you can imagine if someone actually utilized Glue and the way we're designing it, to the extent that they have the imagination, it should be possible for them to sort of sort out these trilemma issues that typically occur. Now, we're not fixing the trilemma problem per se, like a single chain, but we are enabling people to work around it themselves.
Yeah, and I think with implementing that modular architecture using substrates, basically modular part, that kind of solves the trilemma in a way, right? Same as like what Celestia is doing with their modular architecture. So I think in a way, it's still good that you're at least working with it and trying to make the problems a little bit easier.
Yeah, and also looping back kind of on the marketing side, and so just kind of like historical background, right? As Ogle was saying, we've been working with the tech for 2.5 years. Unfortunately, you can't really plan that far ahead on the marketing side, and so I think people expected us to be fully ready on the marketing side right after LBP, and that obviously there was no way to do that, right? Because we were really waiting for the LBP to really get going on the marketing planning. And so that's why everything really is coming together now. And ironically, the marketing is catching up to the tech, not the other way around, which is how it usually works. And so that's kind of why all these things kind of flowing in right now into just like one much larger picture. But also to your point, right? Like the goal is to really start building the vision out next, right? Because the vision is so much heavily how do we acquire users? How do we structure the incentives to really get really cool stuff built on top of a very solid basis foundation, right? But the growth really, I think for us, I think so many of the L1s and also the L2s, right? Their entire vision, it consists of the tech. And once they deliver the tech, it's kind of like, oh, shit, now what, right? And so I think for us, we really mapped out the vision of, hey, where do we want to go after the tech is released? How do we get the users? How do we have an acquisition strategy? How do we innovate? How do we go forward and really grow?
Because
and
it's a
so
philosophy.
yeah, right. And it's a corporate culture, and maybe that's actually, I don't even know if that's a dirty word in crypto or not. But like just there's like an actual like, no, we want to build cool stuff for actual users and get actual users. So yeah, there's like a philosophy and strategy, right? Because I feel like a lot like, I mean, and so it's funny, I've had this discussion with another L1 founder, and they were literally saying they don't want to have a strategy because that would be centralized. I'm like, well, or, okay, maybe there's an argument to be made there that that might be the case, but you're also just never going to get anywhere. And yes, ironically, they are still sitting on a huge treasure and haven't done a whole lot because obviously, right? And so I think just
Yeah, I know that one,
the,
Snapshot. That's a major brand name one. And wow.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like, okay, well, that's a weird way of doing it, right? Like, fair enough, I guess, but like, you're not gonna make a lot of progress, right? And so I think a lot of what differentiates us is the implementation of the tech and the approach to growth, where it's not just we are exclusively about the tech, which is actually interesting, which on the marketing side, so much of crypto, really, they're just like, oh, no, it's all about the tech. And I'm like, kinda. And I really think we have some of the best tech in the space, but also it's the everything else part, right? It's they will not come just because you've built it, right? That's never worked for anyone. And so I think really trying to marry the excellent tech with an actual strategy, both that can work and that we will execute on. I really think that's part of the unique value prop here, which is obviously a bit more difficult to show, I guess. And I think we will just start delivering. And I think when people see what we're delivering and how we're delivering it and how we're executing on it, because I mean, so often, right? That's like so often you always get like, oh, here's the roadmap for the next 4 years, and then they deliver on nothing, right? And I think for us, the delivering and what we will deliver, I think will really speak for itself. And so, but it takes a little while to obviously get going and to get on that cadence. But I'm pretty psyched to get there.
Totally agree. Guys, we're going to have to hop off because I'm at 1% and there's what appears to be a hurricane coming down upon me, and I'm outside. And so going to pop off now. Anyone who hasn't already gone, go to glue.net, go to our Telegram, hang out, say some words. Let us know if you have questions. People listening later, let us know if you have questions, obviously, either in the comments or go to the Telegram. And if you know of anyone who might find this this AMA useful, obviously, repost or tag to them if you don't mind, make sure they can hear it. I hope you guys have a good day. Yeah.
Thanks, Ogle. Thanks, everyone else. Have a great day.
Weekend.